All right, everybody, welcome back to Relaxed and Fast. Today, we are on the road in the studio. Currently, we're still in New York, right?
Yes, we are in New York.
So we're leaving Boston. We ran at BU at the Valentine's invite, and then we went over to Tufts to run a DMR, and Abby ran the 200 and 400. So left on Wednesday. Now it is Sunday at 10 a.m., and we're on the road back to Ohio. So a nice long little trip, and yeah, we're coming at you from a van on the highway somewhere in New York right now. We're just gonna tell some stories and have some fun and pass the time a little bit. So I guess to start us off, Coach, what is your favorite trip that you have taken we'll start with for athletics, and then we can go on to like favorite vacation, I guess.
Yeah, so you obviously kind of prompted me with this about an hour ago, and so I've been thinking about it. I think my favorite trip for athletics has to be, I was trying to think of the year. It was at McPherson, and it was to the KU relays. It would have been, I think, 2011, spring of 2011. And there's all sorts of crazy backstories on this. It's kind of a long story. It's one of my favorite stories. But we had this really good group of guys, especially at the time. And I called us the land of misfit toys. We had a bunch of guys from California, a handful of them were from LA area, and then we had one or two guys that were from the Kansas area, and they all came together in little teeny tiny McPherson, Kansas. And I was a really young coach at the time. It's crazy to think back how long ago that was. But
so 2012 was over 10 years ago. That's really freaking weird to think of.
And so this group was having a heck of a spring, and things were really starting to come together. And their big weekend out there is the KU relays, and they used to run it inside of their football stadium, and KU just has this gorgeous campus, and the setting was really cool, and it was actually on a 440-yard track. So all the splits were like super goofy, and so imagine like the TK starts almost halfway on the turn.
What's the conversion from a 440-yard track to a 400-meter track? Like what?
I mean, is
it close at least?
Well, a mile, so 4 laps would be 9 meters. So it's roughly what 2.1 meters per lap. So almost negligible. And they would have cones down for every split, and you would just kind of walk back type of thing. But we would just sit in the stands and give splits. It was a it was a big time meet where you weren't allowed on the infield and all that kind of stuff.
That's fun.
They would do their entries, entries were due like over 2 weeks before the meet. And they wouldn't post who made it into the meet until like the week of or the Sunday before or whatever. And so we did all of our entries, and I put all of our guys and gals PRs in, and just trying to get everybody in to the distance carnival on Thursday night. And so we had a handful of guys that made it in, and one of our guys didn't make the 10K. And they had like 3 heats of like 35 people.
Oh my God.
In the 10K. And our 32-minute guy didn't make it. And so I got online, and I get on Direct Athletics and /Tfers, and I start looking up everybody else's times. And there's a bunch of people that had lied to get in.
Yeah.
And they said, on the entries that they were going to check. So I called the meet director, and I'm like, hey, I found 16 guys on the heat that Gio has run faster than him. He goes, Coach, that's awesome. He goes, but the reality is that there are more than 16. He's not even the 16th guy off the list. And I was like, well, you can give me the rest of the guys and I'll look all their PRs up too. Like if that's what it takes. He's like, Coach, at this point, we can't let him in. So I tried to argue the fact that they were supposed to be checking all these entries, and he said, we don't have time to do it. I was not very happy with it, but I was like, fine, whatever. So what we did is Central Missouri hosted a meet on Friday that had a 10K. KU hosted on Thursday, and then Central Missouri had a 10K on Friday night. And so we go to KU and we drive from McPherson to Lawrence on Thursday morning. And we go out and they have many heats of the 1500, and they have many heats of the 800, and then at night they get into the 5Ks and then the 10Ks, and the meet, it starts in the afternoon and it doesn't end until like 11 o'clock at night. So, and it's all distance races. So it's a really cool environment, and a lot of the stuff is under the lights and that kind of stuff. And so we go, and our group is just absolutely ready to roll. We have a guy who just missed making, he was in Heat 2 of the distance carnival of the 800, but they had like an elite section on Saturday. He would have placed in that elite, he would have placed in that elite section. He ran like 153 or 154. He won his section, I think. And then he decides to double back in the next event is the 1500.
Oh my.
And so he gets like 45 minutes rest or whatever. And he comes back and he ends up running a PR like 4 flat in the 1500, which was really good for him. So that was David. We had a couple of young ladies that ran really well on the 1500 and ran pretty close to their collegiate PRs. And then we started to get into the distance races. And we had a kid named Daniel Sorensen, and he missed making the fast heat of the 5K. So he ends up leading pretty much from the gun in his heat of the 5K. And I think he got kicked down, which is a pretty rare occurrence for him. He was pretty darn good. But he gets second and breaks 15 minutes for the first time, which I think was close to a school record at that point. Then we had a young lady that broke our school record in the 10K. And then Javier Ceja was up next in the 10K. And he ran a massive PR. I think he ran right around 31 flat and was in the mix to win it pretty much the whole time. So he was in the lead group, and I think he finished second or third, and those guys kind of ran away with it. And as the day was going on, and as we had all these kids running really, really well, I had all these coaches coming over to me, and they're like, oh my God, what are you guys doing for training? And blah, 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 blah. And I even had one of our alums who had been on the team who fought me tooth and nail. He was a senior on the team when I first came in. And I came in February. So I started way later in the year. And he had actually applied for the job. So he thought that he should have been the coach as a senior in college. And he's coming over to me, he's like, Coach, what are you doing? Like, these guys are running so well. And I'm like, dude, we're doing the same stuff I was trying to get you to do like a year and a half ago or whatever. He's like, this is unbelievable. You guys are just running so well. And so we were all really excited. We had this really good night. You know, we had a bunch of people qualify to nationals, hit auto qualifiers for nationals and all that stuff. And so the next day, that night we go to the Motel 6 that we were staying in. My budget was like $20,000 for the whole indoor and outdoor track and field season. Like it was nothing. And so we had to like skate by on this. And so I had to sleep in a room with the athletes, and I slept on the most disgusting roll-away bed that I've ever been on in my life. Like it smelled like feces. The bed and the pillow smelled like feces. So one of the guys had the bright idea that he was gonna spray Axe body spray on the pillow, which then made it smell like douchebag and feces. It was awful. It was awful. So they had 4 in a room, so they're each sleeping 2 to a bed, and I'm on the ground next to their bed. We just piled into this room so that we could make this work and we could go on this trip. Now, so the next day, Seha and I get up, so he's post 10K, and we decide we're gonna go for a run. And so we leave, we take Gio out to do his shakeout, and then Seha, oh baby.
Playing some Mario Kart here while we talk.
We just slid across the lane there, that was fun. Getting excited, need to slow down a little bit. So Seha and I go on this run through campus. And I'm like, hey, let's go over and we'll check out Allen Fieldhouse, which is where they play basketball. It's like a historic basketball arena. And we go inside and we run into the Wichita State coach. And he knows one of the facilities guys there. So they let us in and they're like, hey, do you guys want to go like into the court? And they open up the gym, the arena for us, and we get to go in and like walk through and stand on the basketball court and get to look up at all the national championship banners. And it was so cool. And it was completely empty, but the 3 or 4 of us. And so then we finish our run, we head back to the hotel, shower up, and Sorensen is gonna double back and he's running the steeplechase. And our big rival was a school named Southwestern. They had won like 32 conference championships in a row. They had the dominant distance program in the conference by a lot. And this is back in the Facebook days. And one of their kids on the team was talking all sorts of crap about Sorensen on Facebook. And Sorensen is the second toughest human being I've ever met in my life, behind Hastings Merrick. And he is a very, very close second. He did not take kindly to this kid talking trash about him. And so we drive over. We had 2 different vans because our assistant coach, our throws coach, was there. And so she was going to be with Sorensen, and I was going to drive out another 2.5 hours out to central Missouri with Javier, or Seha, and Gio. And so we take Sorensen, we drop him off at the stadium. Our assistant coach is with our pole vaulter and a couple of our other kids that are there. And we get in the car and we start driving a couple hours. As we're driving out there, Sorensen's race is going, and Gio, or Seha, had a hot spot. And so I had a FlowTrack account. FlowTrack was doing the race. And so Seha's sitting behind me in the minivan, and he's got the race up on his laptop, and the 2 of them are watching the race, and I could hear the play-by-play. Well, we had these like polka dot jerseys that didn't really have that many identifying marks that we were McPherson. And so there was an unattached guy that was also in the race with Sorensen, And they kept saying, and his name began with an S too. So they kept calling his name out, thinking that he was the guy. And so halfway through the race, Sorensen goes charging to the lead, and they're like, it's Samuelson, or whatever that kid's name was. Goes to the lead, and I'm like, is Daniel getting dropped? What's going on? They're like, no, dude, it's still him. Like, he's running away from him. Like, he's gonna win the freaking KU Relays steeplechase.
Holy shit.
So he ends up just absolutely throttling this Southwestern kid. He wins the KU Relays, which means you get a watch. They gave out watches to the event winners.
You gotta bring that back, all right. Come on.
Yeah. So he wins the watch and wins the KU Relays, just absolutely kills this Southwestern kid. And so we go out to Central Missouri. And Central Missouri's track is set up like the Penn track, where it has like 2 or 3 lanes on the inside because the stadium was built up and they only had like a 6-lane track or whatever.
Yeah.
So they had 2 lanes on the inside. It was a really unique setup. And so I head out and all 3 of us head out for Gio's warm-up. I'm rabbiting. I'm gonna rabbit the race for him. And I was fairly fit at the time. And I'd been doing like 4-mile tempos at like 5:20 pace. That was it. That was all I had done. And so the gun goes off, and we had his splits down, and I was going to go out a little faster than his splits. And the plan was I was going to try to make it like 3.5 miles and see if I could do that, because I think the pace was like 5:10-ish, and I was like, ooh, that's gonna start getting pretty uncomfortable for me. And so I take him out, and we're clipping him off. We're just rattling lap after lap after lap off, and we get to about 3 miles, and it's starting to get really hard for me. And I turn around, I'm like, Gio, how you doing? And he's like, stay in. And I'm like, oh God. So I'm like, okay, I'll try to give you another mile. So at this point, I'm gonna try to make it like 4.5 miles. And so I think I made it right around 4.5, maybe an extra. I might have made it 5, but I don't think I made it 5. And so I get him to the point, and I drop out. And there was a train of guys on us. And I had told him at the beginning of the race, like, hey, here's what I'm gonna take it out in. This is the NAIA standard. If you guys wanna go, we'd love to have some company, like jump in. Once I drop, like share the work, and let's see what you guys can do tonight. And so I get him to that 4-ish mile mark, maybe a little bit further. And as soon as I drop, they immediately start falling off pace.
Oh no.
And I'm like, no, like I should have just stayed in and I found a way. And so they're hammering away, and he's still on pace. So I'm gonna rewind a little bit. Gio was a new transfer. He came in January, and he was not in very good shape when he arrived. Like, he was getting dropped in every workout. We would do 200s after the workouts, and he was getting just throttled. Like, the fastest that he could run was like a 34.
Oh,
just did not have the foot speed. But you could tell that once he got fit, he was gonna be really good. And so it gets down to it, and I am like running back and forth on the field. Seha's getting splits for him. And it's getting down to the point where he needs to run like a 65 last lap to make the time. And so I'm running over, and we're yelling at him like, dude, you need a 65 to make this meet. I sprint back over to the 200 to go, and he has to run like a 30-second last 200 to make the meet. And I scream at him, and somehow that dude runs a 29.9 last 200 and makes the national meet by 0.02 seconds in the 10,000 meters. He was the last guy in to the entire national meet for the NAIA.
200ths of a second.
So
no kidding.
We are ecstatic. You know, Gio made the national meet, Seha made the national meet, Sorensen made the national meet in the 5K. He also just made the national meet in the steeplechase. David probably just made the national meet, or it's going to be really close in the 800. Just a phenomenal weekend. So we drive back to the KU relays, or to Lawrence, to our crappy hotel, and we get there and we like immediately go to Sorensen's room, and like we walk in and we're like jumping up and down and like celebrating with him, and then he's all excited for Gio, and like we had given him the play-by-play on the way home, and they were asking all sorts of questions about it, and it was just a really, really cool moment. And then 2 weeks later, it's either 2 or 3 weeks later, we come back and we have the conference meet. So that was obviously story 1 is the KU relays. Story 2 is the conference. We have a chance to win the conference meet. It's at Southwestern, our big rival. It's on their brand new track that they literally just got done building. And we think we have a chance to end their 32-year-long streak on their new track that all their alums that started this streak donated to build. And so we sat down with the guys and kind of really went through how we could try to maximize our points. And we had the best 10K guy by far in Seha on our team, but we also had Gio. We were trying to figure out a way, if there was a way we could win the 4x8. And while Seha wasn't a great 800 runner, he was probably our next best option. And so we decided to take Seha out of the 10K so that he could run the 4x8, the 15, and the 5K. We put David in the 4x8, the 15, the 8, and the 5K. David was not a 5K runner, and that will come up later. Then we put Sorensen in the steeple and the 4x8 on Friday, the 15, the 8, and the 5K on Saturday. He really wanted to beat Southwestern. And then Gio was going to run the 5 and the 10 and the 5. Well, back in the day, Southwestern could see our entries because they were the host school. They set up the meet.
No kidding.
So they went in and did all their entries around what we had entered. They loaded the 10K because we only had one guy in the 10K. And so they knew they could score a bunch of points in the 10K. So we had Seha, who was like a 158 guy. We had Sorensen, who was like a 155, 156 guy. We had David, who was a 153 guy. And then we had, oh my gosh, Preston. Remembered his name. Preston, who in high school had run like 203 or 204, but he had not come close to running that time all year. Like, I'm talking like 209s, 210s for most of the year. And we were essentially like, Preston, you need to summon something. Like, you need to find that 202. If you can run a 202, you're going to keep us in it, and you're going to give David a chance. He's like, I got you, coach. And I'm like, do you? Like, do you understand what we're trying to do here? Like, he's like, I got you, coach. I'll find a way. So I can't remember if we let him off or if we had him go second. We might have let off Sorensen. Can't remember the order. Sorensen ran really well. Seha ran a heck of a leg. He ran like 158, something like that. Preston runs 201.
Oh my God.
And keeps us in it. We hand off. The other school really good at the time was a school named Friends. And my buddy Brad Peterson was coaching them. They had a squad too. And they had the best 800 guy in the conference. He was a national qualifier as well. He had beaten Perry a couple of times. And he got the baton. So him and Perry essentially got the baton at the same time as the Southwestern kid. So all three of them are essentially handing off at the same time. And it became an epic battle between the Friends kid and David just didn't quite have it the last 100 meters. But he ran like 153, 154, ran a great leg. The other kid just ran a little bit better. So we got second and we beat Southwestern. Next up, I can't remember if the steeple was first or if the 4x8 was first. The 10K was definitely last. We'll just, for the story's sake, we'll just go with the steeples next. So the Southwestern kid is back in with Sorensen on this one, and he had been talking crap and saying that, oh, I was sick for KU relays, and that's the only reason he beat me, and this, that, and the other thing. So Sorensen goes out, and he starts to pull away early. Again, like a K in. He's already got like 10, 20 meter lead on this kid. And he's just putting the screws to him. 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna win the race. Calm down. He's like, I'm breaking their track record. And I'm like, all right, man, whatever. Like, just have at it. So he breaks their track record. He breaks the conference record. He crushes this kid. Last up, so Sorensen gets done with the steeplechase, and he's like, Coach, can you give me a calf massage? My calves are locking up. And I'm like, all right, yeah, let's do it. Meanwhile, we had also we asked if we could do ice baths there, and they said no.
No kidding.
So we bought our own trash can. We stole their hose and filled it up and dragged it out to the area, and we brought our own ice and made our own ice baths. And we were ice bathing on the track while the races were going on. We even had it planned out that we had a different van because we had to drive the 2 hours home because we didn't have the budget money to stay overnight. So we had to drive the 2 hours home after the 10Ks that I stayed with Gio at the end of the night. So the minivan, and Gio and I drove back together just so everybody else could get a little bit more sleep. Like, we had it down, dude. We had it down to a science. So I go to massage Sorensen's calves, and I might as well have been massaging this dashboard. Like, his calves were so like, I was throwing my elbow into him and like just digging in, and he's like gripping the side of the table, and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. He's like, just keep going. He's like, I need these things to unloosen. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. So I finally got him to loosen up a little bit. He walked around, and then he got in the ice bath, and they're drinking Endurox and doing all that stuff. And so Gio goes, he's up next, and like, there's just an army of Southwestern guys in this freaking 10K, and a bunch of dudes that are better than Gio, just based on PRs. And they go out, and they're like trading the lead, and then Gio ends up in the lead. And I'm like, Gio, you got to keep this thing rolling, man. You do not have a kick. Like, you got to grind these guys up. Like, you got to make them work it. And he's like, I got it, coach, I got it. He ran like 3 to 5 seconds off of the PR that we had just run a couple weeks ago at that Central Missouri meet. He ran that at the conference meet, essentially leading the second half by himself.
Oh my God.
And he ended up getting like 3rd or 4th place. Like, it was a phenomenal run out of him. And so, as I said, like, he immediately goes on his cool down. Everybody else loads up on the bus. They take off. He jumps in the ice bath. As soon as he gets back, we had food waiting for him. We had his Endurox waiting for him. As soon as he gets out of the ice bath, we get in the van and we start the 2-hour drive home. And the two of us are talking, and we had a really good day. And the rest of the team had a really, really good day too. So Mitchell Creer, just to give you an example of a team, Mitchell Creer was our really good pole vaulter. He's our national caliber pole vaulter. He volunteered to long jump just to try to pick up a point. David, our 800 guy, triple jumped because he triple jumped in high school. I'm like, you get 3 jumps and you're done. He scored points in the triple jump. Like, that's how bad these guys wanted to win this freaking conference meet. David, our 800 guy, is freaking triple jumping to score points. And so we're up, and we are ahead of the projected schedule. Like, we had a great first day. We had a couple of freshman throwers that didn't perform quite as well, but we made up some points in some other spots. And I was really proud of the group. And we're really fired up for the next day. So we start the next day with the 4x1, and there was a kid from Ottawa who was like a national caliber sprinter. And he's anchoring the 4x1, and so we're counting on this kid to offset all of Southwestern's sprint points because they have the second best sprinter in the conference. And the kid from Ottawa pulls up with a hamstring.
Oh.
And we're like, you've got to be kidding me. So the next event on the track is the 1500. And we've got Sorensen, Seha, and David Perry in the 1500. And I go over to those guys and I'm like, I don't care how you do it. I don't care who comes in what place. Nobody beats you. And I might have used some extra words in there. I'm like, nobody beats you. I said, we are going 1, 2, 3 in this. We cannot afford to give up any more points. Find a freaking way to get this done. And it was a windy day. It was a very windy Kansas day. Sorensen and David have wheels. Like, and they were strong enough at this point that they could go from 500, 400, 300 meters out and still hammer like a 60-second last lap. Seha could not do that. He did not have the wheels to drop like a 43-second last 300 or, a 28-second last 200. The race went out slow. And I am screaming at Seha. I'm like, dude, you cannot let this go slow. So Seha goes charging to the lead and keeps it honest. We get to 1,200 meters in, and Sorensen and Seha are pulling away from the group. Like, they are going to go 1-2. Like, they are going to be 1-2. David Perry is fading. And I sprint over to like 330 meters to go, and I'm like, you better effing freaking figure this out, dude. Like, you have to go now. I'm like, we are going 1, 2, 3 in this. And he looked over at me and essentially like gave me a salute and just took off. I'm pretty sure he ended up second. I think he caught Seha and ended up kicking down Seha, which is just unbelievable. So I am running, and I sprinted past the field to be at the 100-meter mark, and I'm yelling at them as they're coming off the turn, and they're sprinting as fast as they can, and it's just a heck of a race. And I am running, like leaping down the straightaway, just let's freaking go, let's freaking go. Southwestern's chipping away because the Ottawa kid's out. Like, he's not running. And our sprints group just wasn't going to get it done. Like, those guys just didn't have what it took. And so we come to the 800, and so now the Friends kid is fresh. Our guys, Sorensen, this is his 4th race in the meet at this point. And I'm like, guys, we gotta, they're like, we got you, coach. Like, we got you. Like, don't worry about us. And so we went 2-3 in the 800. So Perry was 2nd. Sorensen was 3rd, I think.
Jesus.
And so the next thing up is the 5K, and everybody's like, I'm walking around, everybody's like, dude, this is gonna be close. Like, I think you guys might have it. They're like, are you keeping score? And like, honestly, I'm not. I'm kind of just trying to enjoy the moment. Like, our guys are running really well. There's nothing else we can really do. Like, I'm just gonna kind of enjoy this, and however it plays out is how it's gonna play out. Like, the team knows what we need to do. Like, there's nothing else we can really do. So the 5K comes up, and we entered everybody. I was like, I don't want to get to the 5K and not have a bullet to shoot. Like, we need to have all you guys in there. And David Perry's like, but coach, I'm not a very good 5K runner. I'm like, David, just go out in scoring position, and if you can't do it, just fade out the back, save some energy, and we'll throw you on the 4x4, buddy. And he's like, all right. So Friends had a bunch of really good 5K guys. And so there was the 2 Friends kids and Seha that just took off. And the 3 of them are just running away from everybody. And then it comes down to all the Southwestern kids. Gio and Sorensen is like kind of in the group, but he's starting to fade. Perry made it about a mile and he faded. I'm like, you're done, just shut it down. Like, you're running the 4x4. And he's like, all right, whatever. Sorensen starts to fade. And I'm running across the field. I'm like, are you okay? And he goes like this. He like gives me the like throat slash signal. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, is his calf blowing up? Because he was talking about his calves hurting. And I'm like, I'm not willing. Like, he had a chance to win the national championship in the steeplechase. I'm like, I'm not jeopardizing that for him, for his calf to blow up in this freaking 5K. Like, so I go sprinting across the field, and I'm like, is your calf okay? And he goes, he's effing done. Apparently, the Southwestern kid was talking trash to him as he was starting to fade back. He's like, what, you can't hang, buddy? And Sorensen heard him.
Oh my God.
And so Sorensen goes charging through the group and ends up going into the lead of the chase group and ends up getting 4th. So Gio is in this group too. And we're like, Gio, points, baby, points, you gotta find something. He ends up kicking down the 2 Southwestern kids and ended up getting like 4th or 5th in the race and ran a freaking PR. He PR'd after running almost a PR in the 10K the night before. So it comes down to the 4x4, and we are like, all of our sprinters are now all of a sudden they're into it, and they're like, Coach, you can count on me. And I'm like, dude, we can't count on you. We can't count on you. My wife saw you at the mall in Wichita during practice time not that long ago because you didn't want to work hard at practice. And I'm like, but we didn't really have anybody else. So we put some of those guys in there, and they're like, are you really going to put Perry in there? I'm like, I'm about to put Sorensen in there, dude. Like, I trust him way more than I trust you on this. And they're like, Coach, we got this. And so we essentially needed to win the 4x4, and it wasn't going to happen. So we needed something crazy to happen. So Tabor had a really good 4x4, and Southwestern had a really good 4x4. On the backstretch of leg 3, the Southwestern kid blatantly cuts off the Tabor kid. Ends up knocking the baton out of the Tabor kid's hands, and he might have even tripped him to the point where like he fell down. There was an official, I'm using quotes, standing right there. Nothing happened. So they didn't disqualify him. Southwestern wins the 4x4. We lose the meet by 9 points.
Oh.
Our kids were livid. And they were like, you need to file a protest. I'm like, I can't file a protest. Nothing happened to us. And so I talked to the Tabor coach, and he's like, Joe, it's not gonna make a difference. Like, we're not gonna win the protest. They're all Southwestern officials. They're just gonna say we didn't see it, and that's gonna be the end of it. And so we end up I can't say that we won the war, because we didn't really win the war. But man, did we do some serious damage on them. Like, our distance group was far superior. we in our group, just like, once again, guys just stepped up, and we did a great job. And so our coaching staff won Coaching Staff of the Year. Sorensen won Athlete, obviously, won Athlete of the Year. It was a really cool weekend. It was a really cool weekend. And then that group went to nationals and did a really good job, and competed their butts off, and that was it. That was it for me at McPherson. That was my last hurrah there. It was a cool way to go out. They were a really special group. You know, and I still stay in touch with a handful of them pretty loosely, but, you know, through Instagram and stuff like that, and still follow how they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they were a really special group, and a really fun group to work with. They were hard-nosed and bought in, and you know, at one point in time, there were some kids on our team that hadn't bought into the culture of the team, and so they complained to the athletic director that we were having long runs on Sunday mornings. And so we had to cancel mandatory practices on Sunday mornings, and so that group would just tell me what time they were running, and I would just run out the door, and I would meet them, and we would go run out into the country roads, and it would just be, you know, that group of 4 or 5 guys that would that would get our Sunday long runs in. And they did some nasty stuff, man. We would head out on these like days like today, honestly, like just sleeting and snowing, and, you know, out in Kansas, that wind starts whipping through, and, you know, it would get like negative temperatures, and we would run. Essentially, you would run out to the corn or the wheat fields, and everything was a mile square. So we would hit the dirt road, we would run out a mile, we would turn right, we would run over a mile, and then we would run 5 to 6 miles out, and then there was kind of a paved road, and we would turn left, and we would take that paved road, and then we would turn and come back, and we would just run straight for, you know, 6 or 7 miles back, and then we would go into town. If we need to add on, we'd add on in town. But there were a couple times that we would run out into this like 30-mile-an-hour wind, and it would just be so frigid, like bone-chilling frigid on the way out. And then we would turn, and we would have to like lean into the wind so we wouldn't get blown into the ditch as we were running.
Oh my God.
But then you would turn with the wind, and you would have to run like 530 to 540 pace, because the wind was going. If you didn't run that fast and turn your legs over that fast, the wind would essentially just like push you down. It was crazy. It was so like our cut downs on these runs would just be insane, because we'd be going like 6 miles at like 540 pace the whole way back, because you didn't have a choice.
You're just getting propelled forward the entire.
I mean, it was as I said, they were just a fun group. It was just
that was an insane story. That seemed like I felt like I was reading an audiobook there for a minute. I was invested.
the McPherson Bulldogs, man. And so we had these, I that was my first head coaching job. And so I really wanted to make it special and have like special jerseys. And so if you qualified to nationals, you got a white jersey with red and white dots. If you were an All-American, you got red jerseys with white dots. And then if you were a national champ, you got black jerseys with red and white dots on it. So we did a bunch of, and I've tried to do that with the speed suits and the split jerseys and that kind of stuff here, but that's kind of where some of that stuff started for me.
I think that's an important part of our program in a way. I mean, when you go out at a meet and you see someone in a speed suit, like you're gonna have a good race.
Abby yesterday broke out the speed suit.
That's what I keep saying. Sometimes that's my motivation. I'll get to a point in a race and I'm like, I need that freaking speed suit. I'm like, maybe I won't do the job today, but I'm like, I need to get a step closer to getting that speed suit.
We're still waiting on New Balance to send us our speed suits. It's been like 3 years for the guys.
Are you kidding me?
No. Somebody remind me Monday. I need to send another email.
3 years?
Yeah, pretty much. Because when did we get those? It was about 3 years ago.
That's hilarious.
So the story of Capital, 2020. In 2019, let me start over. Kelly Brennan was part of the business ethics competition group on campus. And so this upcoming weekend, so the Case Western weekend, we used to go to Mount Union. Their meet was on a Saturday. And Kelly's business ethics competition was on a Saturday. And so in 2019, she needed a meet on a Friday, and Ohio State always hosted a meet that weekend. And so we just took her down there. Now, it's a different story, but we were hoping that all of the Ohio State women were going to race against her, and she ended up going down to Ohio State, breaking our school record, qualifying to nationals, and ran in a race by herself, essentially. There was like maybe 2 or 3 other people, but she was like led from the gun and just did it all on her own. The next year, our plan was that we were going to just take her back to Ohio State, and we knew that she could do it on her own. We literally just needed a track. And so at that meet, the 3K was really good, and so little baby Alyssa was ready to run really fast. And Hastings was ready to run fast, and Mo was ready to run fast, and Madison Kyle was ready to run fast. So our plan was that we were going to take Kelly down, and then Alyssa, Maddie, Hastings, and Mo were going to come with us and run the 3K. Ohio State cancels their meet. So we are searching and trying to figure some stuff out. Capital has a meet. So we're like, we'll take Kelly to Capital, but what are we going to do with Alyssa, Mo, Hastings, and Maddie? And so we finally decided that Kelly could probably run the 800 and then just come back and rabbit them. So we just entered all of them in Capital. And I called it down and talked to the coach, and she's like, yeah, sure, we'd love to have you guys, like, come on up. And I'm like, is it okay if Kelly rabbits? And like, I asked permission for everything. They're like, yep. She's like, you're probably not going to get much competition for Kelly in the 800. I'm like, we literally just need a track. We just need a track, and we need somebody to not get in our way. And so Coach Ladd was here. Coach Ladd drove us down, and it was just that group. and we showed up like a little bit later into the meet so that we could stay for class as long as we needed. And the meet was later in the day and all that stuff. And so we get down there, and they gave us like an entire classroom as our own team camp. And Alyssa was bored, and so she started drawing creatures on the dry erase board. She's like, okay, give me a head. And we're like, a tiger. And so she drew a tiger head. She's like, give me a body. And somebody was like, a duck. She's like, give me some legs. And so like we made this like fantastical creature on the board. And then it was time for Kelly to go get warmed up. So she went and warmed up. Her grandpa was there, her mom was there. And there were not very many other people there. Let's just put it that way. And so she's ready to go. We last minute instructions, kind of give her splits, and gun goes off. There's only 2 or 3 other people in the race. And so she goes, and I am actually able to yell her directions and splits to the 100 from across the track, because there was so few noises happening inside of this place. So she could essentially hear me yelling at her the entire way around the track. She ran 2:13, whatever. She's gonna be really mad that I don't remember her exact time, but it was a school record. Sorry, Kelly. Breaks the school record, and they have like the 200s, and then it's the 3K. And so she cools down a little bit inside the facility, and we get ready to go. And the plan was for her to take Alyssa through roughly 2K-ish, a mile to 2K, just to see how she was feeling. And so they go out, and it is this train of gold jerseys, and Kelly's leading the way, and Kelly is very, very good at pacing. And so they were dead on pace for like 10:10 to 10:06. I can't remember what the goal time was. And Kelly gets to, she might have even taken her through like 24 to 2,600 meters. And I was like, you need to drop out. Like, we have conference next week and we have nationals coming up. Just drop out of the freaking race. So she drops out, and Alyssa ends up running 10:06 point whatever, and it was like 0.1 slower than Kelly's school record. Like Kelly almost rabbited Alyssa to her school record. Hastings ran a pretty big PR. I think she was like 10:20, 10 high teens ish. Mo ran really well. Maddie ran really well. And so it was just this really cool night. And, you know, before the meet happened, we wanted all of them to run at Mount. And so we were asking, like, is there anybody available to rabbit this kind of pace? And Mount didn't have anybody because they had a bunch of recruits coming for the meet, and they weren't going to run any of their women in it. And I asked Otterbein if they wanted to come over, and they like had already done what they needed to do, or what, like we couldn't find anybody else to help. And so our solution was we'll just go and we'll just do it on our own. And it was so cool because after they were done and on the drive home, they had like so bought into, A, we don't need a 300 track, B, we don't need other people to do this, we can do this stuff on our own. Like, they were just like hook, line, and sinker bought into that. And it was just, it really just kind of embodied that group and like who they were and what they were about. And it was just such a cool trip, cool experience. You know, and obviously, 2 weeks later, COVID hits and it all came to a crashing halt. But it really was a shame because that group they were on the cusp of doing some pretty cool stuff that next year. So, yeah, that's the story of Capital.